For this video, I will be analyzing the beginning of Liz and the Blue Bird, and the scene I'm talking about is, well, the walking scene up to the title, so yeah, pretty much the very beginning. This topic is something that I've always wanted to talk about, so I've decided to put it into video format to share it with all of you. I would assume, since you clicked on this video, that you've seen Liz and the Blue Bird, but if you haven't, I highly recommend watching it. Or if you don't care about spoilers and just want to watch this video for analysis sake, feel free to stick around. The film is based off the series Hibike Euphonium, but the film is structured in a way that you don't really need knowledge of its past series to understand what's going on. If you want to watch Hibike Euphonium before this film, then by all means, but you can also choose to watch this film alone by itself without the worry of missing any context. Disclaimer, I am not at all an expert on film analysis or anything like that. I am simply pointing out what I see, how it makes me feel, and connecting the dots on what this film or story is trying to tell. Welcome to a closer view, and without further ado, let's get started. The scene starts off with a low-angle shot of Mizore, one of the main characters, walking, and due to the pacing of her footing, it tells you that she seems to give off a vibe of someone who is very calm. We can even see that just from her facial expressions alone. Once she arrives at her destination, which is the school, she notices that she is the only person here, but that isn't really the case. It's not that she is the only person there, it's that she is the first person to arrive, implying that there is supposed to be someone else with her. This is backed up when she decides to turn around, staring at the entrance gate that she came through, almost anticipating for someone to show up. And yes, after a while somebody does show up, but it isn't the person she's waiting for. And the reason why we know that is due to the zero interactions between the two, and another small detail that I'll cover later on. And then a couple seconds later comes Nozomi, the next main character, or the other main character. Now, I want to rewind back just a bit and talk about the soundtrack in this scene. Well, not just a bit, but more like the very beginning, but just listen closely to the music. Notice how the instruments come in and out almost randomly. It's not so much as a piece is being played, but more like pieces of a piece are being played. Like it's all chopped up, and there's like gaps in between the sounds. This is just my interpretation, but it's almost like the soundtrack is incomplete in a way. Like there's something missing to fill in those gaps. Now, let's listen to the track when Nozomi steps in. Suddenly, now everything is in motion. We have the piano playing on beat with her footsteps, we can hear the birds chirping in the distance, the wind is brushing against the grass and trees, the environment comes to life. So if we go back again, sorry that I keep going back, we have Mizore waiting for Nozomi whilst we have an incomplete sounding soundtrack playing in the background, and when Nozomi steps in, the soundtrack is playing in full motion with no cuts and gaps, almost as if Nozomi was the person that fills in those gaps in the music. She was the one thing that was missing in the track. Now, in the beginning, we determined that Mizore is a calm character, or rather someone who has a lack of emotion, just from the way she walks and her facial expressions. If we use that same approach towards Nozomi, we can easily tell that she is someone who is somewhat energetic / cheerful. I mean, like the music literally starts playing the moment she enters into frame, and she's already smiling when we first see her face. Even the subtle detail of her ponytail swaying side to side as she walks can show that she is someone full of energy. Now forgive me, but I am going to go back just one more time, but did you notice that when we first see Mizore walking, we have, as I described, that incomplete sounding soundtrack playing in the background? However, when this character shows up, there is not a single instrument playing. This was the small detail I mentioned I would cover earlier. A nice subtle way of saying that this character does not play part in this piece. It's the overall vibe, if that's the right word to use, and the small details in this scene that tell you that she isn't important and doesn't play part in this musical piece. She's not part of the music. The only ones who are a part of this piece are Mizore, the quiet, calm, expressionless, and Nozomi, the cheerful, energetic. Now that we have both main characters present, let us continue. So we have Nozomi walking towards Mizore, then we get a low angle shot of Mizore's legs as she stands up. They both walk up the stairs. However, even though Mizore was the first person to arrive at the school, Nozomi takes the lead. How interesting. We'll cover more of this later on. As they're walking up the stairs, we finally get our first piece of dialogue in this scene where Nozomi finds a blue feather on the ground, admires how pretty it is, and hands it over to Mizore.
わ、何これ、めっちゃ青い。綺麗。
Now, since we've all seen the film, or I would assume you did since you're watching this video, this is just subtle foreshadowing saying that Mizore represents the blue bird in the storybook Listen to Bluebirds, since she is now in possession of the blue feather, but that's a topic for another time. Okay. Now let's get into the actual walking scene. So the two of them enter the school building, and both of them go to their lockers to switch to their school shoes. Look at that little eye movement. We are then given a shot from inside the building of two birds landing in a tree, the tree being the school and the birds being Nozomi and Mizore, pretty self-explanatory. And then this segment where they place their shoes on the ground is another subtle way of showing character. Nozomi, the carefree energetic, just drops her shoes on the ground, while Mizore, the calm collected, just gently places it. Next, Nozomi exits the locker area while brushing her hand against the locker, and Mizore follows, doing the exact same thing, almost as if she's copying her. Now they're walking through the halls, but pay attention to how they walk. Nozomi has big powerful strides like she's leading the way. However, Mizore's walking is calm, but it isn't just calm though. Look at how her body is angled. She's slightly leaning forward as she walks. It's not so much as she's following Nozomi, but more like she's being pulled by her. Like she's entranced by her, like following a shiny object. We even see this again at a much closer shot. We can clearly see she's leaning forward at an angle. Now just one second, before we get the shot of Mizore, there's this shot of Nozomi walking by, but what do you notice about this shot? It's at a Dutch angle. I think. I mean, it's tilted. I will come back to this shot towards the end of the walking because I feel like it would structurally make sense for explanation's sake. But for now, let us continue. Next shot, we have Nozomi drinking from a water fountain, and then Mizore follows. At this point, we already know that Mizore is just doing whatever Nozomi does. It's why we don't actually see her drink from the fountain like Nozomi, and instead only see her hand pushing the button, kind of a way of saying, yeah, you get the point. They're walking up some stairs, and Mizore's head is angled towards Nozomi because, again, that ooh, shiny object, she's entranced by her. To Mizore, Nozomi is this amazing person she loves and admires so much, but the difference in their characters is such a vast distance. This shot right here insinuates that. Just look at the distance between them. More stairs, and again, the attention to detail with characteristics and personality. Nozomi, the happy energetic, does a little twirl as she turns, and she's skipping steps on her way up the stairs. Then there's this low angle shot from Mizore's point of view of Nozomi's legs, that low angle shot insinuating power. She holds Nozomi to such a high pedestal, someone she loves and admires so much. And then comes in probably the best shot of this entire film. I'm just gonna let it play out because it is just beautiful. I don't care if I get a copyright strike. This was the cherry on top, the icing on the cake, a wonderful, splendid, beautiful way of showing that these two characters have been friends for a while, since middle school. Just a simple flashback of these girls doing the exact same thing as they're doing right now, walking to school, like it's an everyday routine. That's how storytelling should be done. Show, don't tell. I already know the personality of these characters just from the way they walk and their expressions. I already know how one feels about the other just from her actions alone and how she looks at her. And we now know that these two are possibly best, if not close friends, just from a subtle flashback. To us, the viewer, this is the first time we've seen them walking together, but this one time tells us that they've been doing this routine many times. And we got all of this without dialogue, no internal monologue, just walking. And then how the background music just slightly changes to this nostalgic feeling, like it's a feeling of the past. It all just ties nice and neatly into a beautiful bow. It all fits so well in this scene. Okay, I gotta relax for a bit. And for their final destination, we finally get to see where they are headed, and it's the music room. Nozomi does a little twirl and enters. And now... disjoint. Why does it say disjoint? Let us go back to that Dutch angle we saw. If you guys don't know, Dutch angles are used to showcase uneasiness, discomfort, building tension, something is about to happen, or something being wrong or off. It's mostly used in horrors and dramas, but it can be used in any genre so long as it fits the context of what's going on. So, why did they choose to animate this shot at a Dutch angle? Well, although this whole walking scene does give us insight on who these characters are, it does give you a feeling of something being a bit off. First, we know they're friends because they're walking to school together, but the space between them is so vast. It makes you question what kind of friendship they have. Is it mainly one-sided? Perhaps something happened in their friendship to have them so distant with each other, and we just don't know yet. And then there's this entire scene of not having any dialogue or conversations other than Nozomi handing the blue feather to Mizure, then they just walk in silence throughout the rest of the scene. If these girls have been friends since middle school, you would expect them to at least chat it up on their way to the music room, or who knows, maybe it's too early in the morning for that. And as they're walking, we notice some things like Mizure copying Nozomi, the way Mizure looks at Nozomi, Nozomi leading the way, and Mizure sort of just following her like she's being dragged in a sense. Let's not forget about the characters' personalities, like they're literally the complete opposite of each other. I feel as though once we take all of this into account and notice these subtle details, I guess that's why they would animate this shot at a Dutch angle, just to give you that unsettling feeling that yes, even though these two are friends, there's something a bit off about them. This was all just my interpretation. Who knows, maybe I'm just completely wrong about it. And at the end of it all, we get disjoint. These two aren't really jointed together at all. Once Nozomi and Mizure enter the music room, the two of them have a seat and warm up with their instruments, and it is actually the first time we get to hear the characters' names. Even though I've been saying their names this entire time, this is the first time we hear them through regular conversations and flashbacks.
嬉しい。ん？あ、みぞれも嬉しい？
For Nozomi, her name is introduced through a flashback, and what's brilliant about this flashback is that it tells two stories at once. One of them being the story about Liz and the Blue Bird,
リズっていう一人ぼっちの女の子のお話。
which is the piece they're practicing for, which is also based off a book in the movie with the same title, and the context of how Nozomi and Mizure met.
ずーっと一人ぼっちだったリズのところにある日知らない少女がやってくるの。ねえ君、名前なんていうの？私、田崎のぞみ。一緒に水分入らない？
Nozomi then goes on explaining the rest of the story of Liz and the Blue Bird and how at the end, Liz and the Blue Bird end up parting ways. And when she says this, we see on screen Nozomi and Mizure's hand being separated in this flashback. This now sort of gives us context on what happened in their friendship in the past, which could explain the feeling of uneasiness or awkwardness during the walking scene and their current disjointed relationship. This film wouldn't be telling us these two stories if they didn't relate to each other. The bird flies, leaving Liz behind, and we saw Nozomi and Mizure's hands being separated in this flashback, but even though both of the two are seen together, we now get the feeling that one of them is going to have to quote-unquote part ways with each other in a sense in the later future. Once again, this film wouldn't mention these two stories if they didn't relate. Even Nozomi mentions that the story sounds like her and Mizure.
なんかちょっと私たちみたいだな。
But we don't have to worry about any tragic endings in this movie. Thanks to Nozomi's foreshadowing, she says this.
でも別れるなんて悲しいよね。物語はハッピーエンドがいいよ。
Mizure agrees, then she slowly tries to lay her head on Nozomi's shoulder. But Nozomi gets up and suggests they practice the piece.
空のとこ。
So close, yet so far away these two are. The part of the piece Nozomi wants to practice is the third movement, which is called A Decision Born of Love, which in that part of the piece, ironic enough, represents Liz and the Blue Bird parting ways. we finally get the title of the movie, Liz and the Blue Bird. If you stuck around till the end of this video, I am very thankful that you did. Once again, this is something that I am new at. I am not really experienced in film analysis or anything like that. I am simply stating how these scenes make me feel and trying to connect the dots on its methods of storytelling. So leave a comment on this video for some feedback. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. This channel is mainly going to be taking a closer look on some of my favorite anime shows or pieces of media because I simply just love talking about them and looking at them much more deeper than the surface. Once again, thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.